Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to the CarpFix studio. Not a normally we do a Friday night for the live, but because Tom Maker couldn't make it last Friday, it wasn't his fault actually, but due to not going through with what we said we were going to have Tom Maker down on the Friday for reasons that we won't go into. That couldn't happen, so we decided to get him in, and we'll have an extra CarpFix live this month. So here he is. Welcome to the studio, mate.
Thanks for having me down.
It's nice to have someone else.
It is indeed. So first things first, we're just going to talk about the purpose of the CarpFix Live is generally to do a Q&A. We do give away some prizes for some good questions just to get people past the bashful stage. So get your questions in. How many of these bucket sets have we got?
So we've got 10 of those. Sticky,
10.
you've kindly given us 10
lots
of those. Which, do you want to talk through what you get, Tom? Because you did a little video for us earlier, so you should be able to reel it
hopefully
off.
remember what it is. Yeah, so in each one is you've got a bucket, which you can see here. You've got some of the newly released Manila Active tough ones, Manila Active wafters both in 16mm. You've got a couple of stickers for pimping up whatever you want to pimp up. You've got a towel, a cup, and a bottle of the Calanus liquid as well. So it's a fairly decent bundle, and most of that stuff that's sat down there now, even I haven't got. So done very well to get it before me.
So all you got to do to get yourself one of them is ask us a question and for us to like the question. So very, very simple. Also, we are going to give these away to one lucky subscriber. These are not for a question, because then I could just pick my friend. We're going to do an automatically generated number from our subscriber list to get these 3 Daiwa Bezier Customs, which once the winner has been decided, we're going to send them back to Daiwa, have them fully serviced, looked at, make sure they're in full working order for you, and probably, not guaranteed, we'll probably get Daiwa to send them direct, but if not, they'll come back to us and then we'll get them out to you. So shall I just do a little bit about Tom's new film?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so Tom recently went to Linear for us, for CarpFix, for his first debut session. And the one thing that I remember from doing tuitions at Linear myself is that most people that came on the tuition, or the other anglers that I met there, were too focused on getting on a certain lake and not fishing to the conditions, as in, they like, I want to get in Henman Hill, I want to fish where Underwater was filmed, I want to catch Kempies. Whereas from what I saw when I was trying to take people on one-off sessions, the best thing you could do is have an open mind. Obviously you have favourite lakes, but what was your sort of, you knew you were filming, you knew you were under pressure, what was your thoughts on arriving, what did you plan to do and how did it unfold?
So like the thing with Linear, and obviously everyone who fishes there and who has been there, they will know it's busy. And it's not just busy, it's very busy. Yeah. And it's busy for a reason. I see a lot of people always saying, like, when every night they update how many pegs are free. Yeah. And there's always people passing comment. The reason it's busy is because it is good. Yes. And there is nowhere else that offers carp fishing like that. Like, readily available on a day ticket, catching big fish. And you're not talking just big fish in one lake, they're big fish in every lake. Yeah. And so obviously we had the filming penciled in to go there. And I never go there with like a preconceived idea of where I want to fish. I will just go and I'm going to Linear. That's the attitude. I think that if you are going to go fishing there, you've got to go with the attitude of I'm going to Linear. You can't say I'm going to St John's, or you can't say I'm going to Manor, because if you can't get on one of those lakes, I've seen people drive away disappointed because they can't get where they want to go. And like, I can understand that. I can fully understand it. And if you've got your heart set on a certain fish that you want to catch, but you've also got to then, you're stacking your odds, they're not in your favour of catching a particular fish because you are fishing against so many people. Yeah. So like, we obviously turned up there and there was zero privileges. It's very hard to explain because no matter how much you try and explain, there will always be people say, well, no, you've had this, and this. But we turned up there in the morning. I got on the gate. I was like 4th or 5th in the gate. Scott arrived a little bit later on, and we just allowed everybody else to go through. And it was quite a chilled way. And it was more just to show that don't just sort of roll out the car and put a bucket in the first peg what you see, or don't go around the lake that you want to fish, and if you can't get on it, go home. It was a case of, you've got 7 lakes there, all of them offer absolutely fantastic fishing. Like, I understand that you might be targeting, say, Kempies, and if you're not fishing on Manor, you're not going to catch it. Yeah. But there's always people coming and going, and it's busy, but there's a good turnaround of people. People are travelling a long way. People's circumstances change when they're on the bank there, and there's always an option to move. And I think that's the biggest key with it is look at the conditions what are coming in. Go round and speak to a lot of the other guys. And again, I know a lot of people like to keep themselves to themselves, but that type of fishing, that's how it is.
Okay. So here's a question then. What's explain linear bucket politics? So I think a lot of people just walk around. It's busy. Like that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And they always say you always manage to get in a good swim, right? Yeah. And the way that I've always done that is politely ask how long you're here for, when you're going. Has anyone asked to come in here after you? And is that the same as it works there?
Yeah, it's obviously people will always try and pull a fast one on you.
As in like they know full well their mate's coming down. Yeah.
But they're then staying for an extra 24 hours, and you then go to have a look around another lake only to turn up and there's someone else in the swim.
Yes.
But I don't say nothing about that. I just get on with it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So I'll go through the gate, and people want to have a chat, so I'll go and have a chat to them, and I just say to them, and having fished it quite a lot, and one of the biggest bits of advice I can give for fishing linear is follow the wind. If you're looking at the long range forecast and you follow the wind, head to them areas on each of them lakes first, and that is always going to be your best starting point. So I'll always head to those certain areas first, and just speak to them. Just be like, and obviously they'll look and they'll be like, I can't believe you're speaking to me, and I'm like, I'm here to fish. I love my fishing there. I go there because I love what it has to offer, what the fishing is on offer there, and that's why I go and fish it a lot. And go round, I speak to people, any good, have a bit of a chat to them. Just say, look, I don't like to ask, are you off today?
Yeah.
The worst they can say is no. Yeah. So then you move on. So you move on to the next person.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people won't even do that though, won't they? They just
and then they walk, and then they'll go and they'll drive past me in the evening. Like, oh, I trust you to get in a good swim. I'm like, but I arrived here. I left my house at 2 a.m.
Yeah. And
that's another thing what I say to people as well. My alarm clock works the same as everybody else's.
Yeah.
But if I want to get on the gate first, I'll leave at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I know people are like, oh, that's just ridiculous, but if I'm there for 3 or 4 days, them extra few hours, I can make up on them sleeping when I'm there. Of course. And, I do say to people, like, them extra sort of, and let's go back from the Walthamstow days. Like, we used to get on the gate first to have first choice of peg. Yeah. And that's what used to decide for whether your session was going to be good or bad. So I'll always make sure I'm, like, first on the gate or one off the first people on the gate. Go and speak to them. If they're going, look, I don't want to annoy you, mate. Can I just plop a bucket in behind you? Let me know roughly when you're going. Here's my mobile number. If anything changes, just give me a call, and then I'll see you later on.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine.
Yeah, I don't think you can be any fairer than that. And I think you can get up really early in the morning, get in through the gate, not talk to people, think that swim's taken, but by 10 o'clock they're really in to go home. And if you haven't asked that question or posed that question or had that conversation, like you say, you never know that swim was coming free.
No, I'm not saying that you've got to go and knock on people's bivvy doors to wake them up, because that's absolutely not necessary. And if someone done that to me, I would be like, pretending I still was asleep. But if you see the person's awake, like, you might get a frosty response because it might be early in the morning. But if he says, I'm going, just put a bucket there. You've got somewhere then. And when you're actually on the complex, and that was shown in the video as well.
Yeah.
When you're on the complex, don't just be set where you are and think, this is where I want. Like, because we started off on hunts, which I love fishing on hunts. There's some brilliant fishing on there, fishing in there to be had, and there's some lovely carp in there as well. But the time of year that it was when the big uns in Manor are due out.
Yeah.
And I know it's obvious, but if I'm on hunts, I can't catch what's in Manor.
Yeah. But you couldn't catch them in a rubbish corner on Manor either.
No, there's a few swims, and it sounds bad, but I wouldn't fish Manor if I couldn't have got in them swims. But then I would have gone to another one of the lakes. You've got 7 lakes there. Say if you've got 10 pegs on each lake you want to be in, you've got 70 pegs. Yeah. So there's a good chance that you are going to get in one of those.
One of those, 70,
I walked round the day before we moved on to Manor and just said to a lad, like, when are you off, mate? And he said, I'm off tomorrow. Now, a lot of people will be like, God, put in a bucket and behind someone for 24 hours. But if you want to put that level of commitment in, if I was to go into a peg and someone said, look, the lad over there on the other side's put his bucket in here, I'd think, fair play. Like, he's, you're making, he's making a good move to go in that peg. And for the right time, and ultimately, we're there to catch a fish.
Yeah.
Whether you're filming or you're on a pleasure trip, you're going fishing to catch a fish.
They're the things that you can't buy those things.
No.
People always want to say, I'll put 10 gear bait out or this rig or whatever it is. But that costs nothing.
No.
That costs nothing, and that can be the thing that makes or breaks the session.
It's getting in a good swim.
I said to Scott when we went to Berners, I said, as long as I'm not out-keened, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, because that's, if you do the best that you can do, then it's up to the fish.
That is it. It's like I said before, everyone else's alarm clock works the same as mine. I don't work to a different time frame than anybody else. I can get up at 1 a.m. and go fishing.
Yeah.
It's not like no one else can do the same.
No.
You know, we can all do that, and they're the things that
really make the difference.
It's the small little things. It's no different to if you're actually fishing. It's the small little percentages make the biggest differences, and the effort level as well is. I'm a believer. If you put the extra effort in, it'll be rewarded, and don't ever be afraid to move. That's what I always say.
No. Move to the right spot.
Yeah, but it worked out well in the end. Like.
Yeah,
not that I could have.
It's the same for both of you though. Like you've
it's the same everywhere.
Berners,
it's the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Berners,
busy day tickets,
you know?
busy syndicates, whatever it is. You know, I always like if you, because you can't see what's beneath the surface, and if you're not an experienced angler, you just think fish swim all around the lake.
Yeah.
And to a degree, they do.
At some point.
At some point. But if you liken it to going into a bar, so what people can see, if you walk into a bar and there's no girls in there, you can't pull a girl, can you?
No.
Right? So then you move on to the next bar. And then
Where there
might be some. And it's the same, but it's below the surface. You
Yeah.
know, you still have to be in the right position.
Yeah. A bit of prior planning definitely doesn't go amiss. Like, you know, a lot of people I speak to and they say, how do you know what way a southwest wind's blowing? And I'm like, well, that's like something that I look at. Even if I was going to a lake now that I'd never been to, I'd pull a map of it up. I'd look at the way the compass is, what way the wind's going, have a look. And on any lake, I mean, I don't do a lot of fishing on small lakes, but I can't imagine that'd be much different. Wherever a wind's blowing into, you're never going to be far away from a carp. That's the way I always look at it.
Especially on a lake with a lot of carp.
Yeah, lakes like those with a lot of carp, that you're going to get a lot of carp on the end of a wind. And then they can become very easy to catch because they want to stay there and they won't move. So, but like, I love linear, and when you break it down, I say it so many times to people, if you was to, a lot of people spend like 3 to 4 years on a syndicate water until they catch the one they want to catch. You've got 7 lakes there, so you've got 20 years fishing. Yeah. That's if you was to target the fish what are in there now. Yeah. But without them, that's without them growing. Now, and I've seen all them waters come on leaps and bounds. Like Brasenose one, when it first opened, was chuck a bag of pellets 10 yards out, scoop of pellets over the top, catch 20 fish in a day. Right. But now I reckon there's, I mean, I put my neck on the line. I mean, I'd say you've got over 500 30-plus carp in, 30-pound plus carp in.
530 in B1.
Like, and people might think that's crazy, but I reckon you've got upwards of 20 40s. Right. Okay. Like, in terms of a day ticket water that offers that sort of fishing, there's nowhere like it. And, you know, it's done a 50-pounder now. Yeah, I've seen. Back in the day, like...
It's one of the most popular lakes now, isn't it?
Yeah, for obvious reasons. Yeah. You know, people are going fishing and they want to catch good quality fish, and it offers it there. Yeah. And it's, to me, I almost think it's a bit of an addiction. Like, I love going there. I don't know, I just love it. I love the place.
There's something about, you know when you're doing it well, you know what you got to do before you get there. If you can get into one of those pegs, you know you're
going to have a good trip.
You know you're going to have a good trip.
And you've got some nice fish as well. Like when we filmed on Manor, like, I mean, all right, you can't predict what you're going to catch. No. But, you know, you're going there to do a film and you're catching fish to nearly 40 pound. Like, it's just, the fishing in there is, and the harder you work there, the more you will catch. And a lot of the lakes, sometimes if it's a bit like, put them out, there's nothing you can do. On linear, you could be like, right, if I move, I'm going to catch. If I put a spom out, I'm going to catch. You know, if I put a zig out, I'm going to catch. There's always stuff you can do there. And I just think...
You should be catching, shouldn't you? On a lake that's got, with that many fish, you should be catching.
Yeah, not necessarily like catching all the time. And, you know, there's no shame in going to linear. I mean, I've been there on numerous occasions and not caught, and there's absolutely no shame.
I blanked on Hardwick.
There's just no shame in it. And a lot of people think you should go there and like they say to me, oh, you know, you've gone there and you're doing this and that. And I'm like, I haven't just put my net in the water and they've swum into it. Yeah. You've still got to catch them. And, you know, they're very, very pressured fish, and it's good because it always keeps you thinking. Yeah. Like, and, you know, it's... I've learned a lot from fishing on there, and you know, I will
learn
always...
by catching and not catching.
Yeah,
you know, it's like when I fish like a really, really low stock lake, there will be times when I'm not doing it right, but I don't make the adjustment. I put it down to not being on the fish. It's only when the fish are there, you know they're there. Yeah, and you think I should have caught one, you know. And at linear, sometimes you just know they're there, don't you? And you know you think you should have caught one.
Should have caught, yeah.
And you make an adjustment, that triggers a bite, and then little micro adjustments that you make from there.
And they're very good waters for like building confidence.
Yes.
Now, you know, I've been down here today filming some rig bits, and I will make like no excuses. When it comes to rigs, I'm not technically gifted. Like I don't like sitting there and doing all like refining them, this and that. I know that the rigs that I use, if they go in a fish's mouth, they're going to catch. And even if I was to go and fish a place that's lower stocked, that's supposedly rock hard, I wouldn't go on there with anything different than what I've learnt, because I know that the fish I've caught, they fight the same. They pretty much feed the same. And when they drop their guard and you get a bite, I don't want a rig that I don't really know if it's going to work. So they're a very good water for building confidence.
They're tools. Rigs are tools, aren't they? And people seem to forget. Like people get their head blown up by rigs, and you know some people are actually into rigs as part of their fishing. As in, that's part of the thing they get the most fun out of. Like they enjoy tweaking and making adjustments. Whereas that, I guess, that's not what you.
Oh, I can respect them for doing that.
Yeah, but
like
it's not what you're into. It's not like something you take pleasure from.
No, but it's like I was saying earlier on, when the fishing's quite fast paced, like I don't want to be driving home in 2 days' time after a session thinking, do you know what? If I'd have not messed about doing this or not messed about doing that, I could have had a few more fish.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't see, if I was to have used different rigs, if I would catch any more quicker. So maybe that's just me being a bit like, I'm not even going to think about doing it. But I don't know. They work. I don't ever sit there and think, then bobbins aren't going to go up and down. I just sit there and think...
I feel the same.
Yeah, so, but that's what's good. Like, you know, we're like completely worlds apart with like,
not really,
what we fish though, and the lakes we go to.
But not really worlds apart, as in rig thinking and stuff. Like one of the lines that I've often used, like when I've been on filming shoots with people that use more technical rigs than me, is I've never been out caught by someone because their rigs are better than me. No one has ever gone in the next peg to me and bashed me up because their rigs are better. They bashed me up because their spot's better, because they're fishing better,
or the fish more,
or the fish are more on that side.
Yeah.
But I've never had someone just go in next to me and bash me up because their rigs are better than mine.
No,
and I bet you probably had the same. No, you've never had the same either.
No, I don't see like these, because obviously you've got a lot of varying anglers go to linear.
Yeah.
And with what's available on the market, like there's nothing that's available to us that isn't available to everybody else that we can use that they can't use.
No.
And you can buy. Again, what we was doing today, components I use in some of my rigs are like ready-tied choddies.
Yeah.
Well, someone else can do exactly the same. So it's not like it is. You know, rigs they're a very personal thing.
They are important, but once you've got one that works for you, or a few that work for you in different situations, you don't need to use a different one every time you go, do you?
No, I just switch off. Like I've got my rigs. If someone was catching on something else, I wouldn't change.
No.
I would stick to what I know.
Yeah.
And I think when people start changing, that's when their head just fries and it's
explodes.
Just like, you know, amount of times I've been fishing, whether it's abroad, or, you know, world championship, like any sort of like matches, always going back to what you know will always get you out of trouble. So I don't ever deviate from what.
Because then you can concentrate on the actual. If you've got a tool that works, you just need to use it in the right way, don't you?
Yeah.
As in, put it in front of a fish, get your bait over the top of it,
and they will feed.
And even if the first one doesn't get hooked, the next one might.
The next one might, yeah. And that's how I am. But like I say, fishing there like does teach you a lot about carp fishing and the way fish act. And again, because of how busy they are, you're not necessarily ever doing anything that different to the guy next door. Because a lot of the guys fish the same now, and a lot of them have come on a long way. Like a lot of the angling I see now is quality angling. Like, and I look at people and I think, yeah, you know exactly what you're doing, and I'm not doing a lot different to them.
No,
you know, so the fish are becoming more wary as a result of that.
Definitely, mate. Definitely.
Like that's probably the biggest thing, and certainly what's come from the whole lockdown sort of situation. The more people out on the bank, the more the carp are seeing. And you just can't do a great deal different. So you've got to have like that little bit of extra
oomph,
and sort of things that you've picked up in the past to apply to it. And like they're the sort of little things, but the extra effort, especially when you're going up there, like, same as anywhere, definitely is the biggest key.
Yeah. All right, Scott. Should we have?
I've got some questions based on probably how you would approach linear. So Callum has asked, how do you cast accurately when you're casting over 100 yards every time? Also, well done for landing one of the A team at Manor Farm.
Thank you very much. So again, the casting thing. Now, this is probably the biggest stumbling block I see with a lot of anglers. They'll book a lesson on how to cast far, but when you go to an actual lake and you're fishing in a fishing situation, it is not like casting a lead across a field.
No.
And a lot of it is down to practice. Like, I go a lot, I practice a lot, but what I see a lot of people do is they have a massively imbalanced setup. Now, I know that not everyone can have spare spools for their reels, and I know everyone doesn't always necessarily fish at, say, linear, or they don't always fish at range, but if you're turning up, and so linear, you can use whatever you want with regards to line and tackle. So if you know you're not a massive caster, but you want to fish at 100 yards, but you're turning up there 15-pound fluorocarbon, you're not going to be able to do it. And I can appreciate that if that's what you're using on the lake that you normally fish, on the off chance of nipping to linear with 15-pound fluorocarbon or an 18 or a 20-pound mono, you're not going to be able to achieve that. So you have to go sort of prepared for how you want to fish. Now, when I go there, it's either a 13 or a 16-pound line with either a fluorocarbon or a braided leader. So I know that the casting is the minimal effort. I don't want to be thrashing it to a foam with a thick line to try and get it out there. I take all the PVA off. I don't fish no PVA bags, just singles. And with fishing them like tight, free on a spot, I just pick one tree and focus on that one tree. And no matter how tight and accurate people think they are, and I've done a bit of underwater stuff with like rigs and stuff, you are never going to get rods that are crossed or that the hook baits are touching. No. And if they are close, that's what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So going there with the right setup
make the casting easy
is key, because turning up there, and you've also got to think that they're windy as well, them lakes, and
they're open, aren't they?
They're very open. Like on one of the days, the wind swung and it blew into our face, and I was still able to hit where I was fishing, but a couple of the guys around me were struggling. And again, with the lakes being as busy as what they are, if it takes me 3 chucks to get 3 rods out, but it takes the guy next door 12, by the time he's made that much disturbance, I would have caught a fish because I've made no disturbance. So it's being able to fish to a range where you can fish without looking at what people around you are doing and worrying that you're not doing it right. I would say go there with a setup that you know you can fish like at a comfortable range. And, you know, again, like I say, if you haven't got spare spools, you know, put a line on that's a good all-round line that you know if you want to fish a bit of distance, you can.
Give him a set. Give
Callum.
Give him a bucket. Well done, Callum.
Got 10 to give away.
First question.
He was the first one, so it'd be rude not to.
Yeah.
So another one is from Sam. He's asked. This is for Tom again. I mean, you can always butt in a little bit if you want. Now it's coming into the summer months. What are your tactics for getting a big hit of fish together on a well-stocked venue with a depth of around 4 to 12 foot? And how would your bait application change from the spring? He's put in the spring, but I'm going to guess he's changing from the spring into summer.
From spring into summer, how would you change your bait application to generate a big hit?
There isn't really a great deal to change. Like, a lot of people are always a bit... One thing I would say with summer fishing compared to spring fishing is, come the summer, if you're fishing on a heavily stocked lake, I'm taking it's going to be busy, or had been busy. Yeah. The fish are going to be a bit more on edge than what they normally... because they've been hammered.
Yeah.
You know, linear's a prime example. Come July, August, September, it can be rock hard.
Really?
Yeah, because the fish are just like, whoa, we know what's happening now. You know, and it's almost like over the autumn and winter period, they forget about what's gone on. But I don't really change a great deal. Again, if you're confident in what you do, you don't really need to change a lot.
People always, like, I'm guessing what he's getting at is, do you put more bait out? And from what I've seen of your fishing, is in that you build it rather than you put it all out in one go. And everyone thinks you need loads of bait to have a hit, because let's say you've caught 40 fish in a session, you might have gone through 20 key of bait, but you didn't put 20 key out to start with, did you?
No, and that is one of the biggest mistakes I see people make. They'll come around to me and they say, how are you getting on? I've had 6 or 8. Oh, you put much bait out? I've done about 5 or 6 kilo. They go round to their peg, put 5 or 6 kilo out.
Without having caught anything.
But if I'd have put 5 or 6 kilo out, I wouldn't have caught them fish.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the biggest thing, is never go in and just think, like everyone says, oh, it's after spawning, they're going to be on a feed up. They're the same carp. Yes, they might be on a feed up, but build them into that feed.
Yeah.
You know, and again, like I was saying before, if you set up in a peg and you don't necessarily want to be there and you've got an option to move, if you've gone and put 5-6 kilos of bait in, you're then sat there like, oh, I've put a whole bucket in, can I really move? So then you've committed yourself to an area. So I never overcommit. So nothing in terms of baiting changes. It's more gauging the session on how it starts.
Reading it as well.
Yeah, so I always start off with like 8 or 10, depending on how accurate they are, and just read it from there. So if you feel like you should have maybe caught one,
it's how much bait do you need to generate a reaction, isn't it? It's like if your hook baits were just out there, you can catch, but sometimes you just need something around them to.
You need smell. Like I always say to people when they say, "Why do you top up?" When the bait's on the bottom, to me that's dead bait.
Right.
It's down on the bottom. There's no real smell coming off of it.
Yeah.
And you got to think, and like you would have seen with the underwater films, no carp enters a peg on the bottom.
No.
None at all.
They need pulling down.
And if they're coming through a cloud of smell, they're going to be drawn down by that. So I always say to people, put a couple out. Just even if you're not getting them, not mega accurate, but even if they're in and around the just something that if a fish swims through, you know, they don't swim past your spot and put their head down and be like, oh, there's bait down, I'm going to go down there. Give them a reason to go down. So, like, don't be afraid to top up, but don't go putting like 15 out as a top up. 1 or 2. There's a lot of bait in one spot.
Yeah.
And if you're using like a real sort of smelly mix, there's a lot of scent in that as well. And that probably gets more bites than anything.
Yeah.
Topping up.
Yeah.
A question on topping up. Dave has asked, if you caught a fish at night, would you spot out more feed or wait until it comes light? How would you ensure your accuracy if you were to spom out in the darkness? Is there any little tips for spomming in the dark?
Well, I always fish with tight lines, and Scott would have seen this as well. So obviously you're picking a feature, like quite a prominent feature that you can aim at. At night I will always spom with a white spom.
Yeah.
And I'll always spom with my head torch facing up in the air.
Yeah.
So when I'm spomming I can watch the spom go out. And also people will see I fish my tips quite low. But at night I'll always have the back one on a relatively high pole, or I'll either have my pod out and I'll have my tips out. So at night you can sort of
pull your mic a bit closer for us.
So at night you can sort of dip your tips, and as you lift them out of the water, where the line is, like where the water's on the line, you can see.
Yes.
So do the first spom by standing directly behind your rods and casting down the line, and then sort of following your spom out. That's about as best as you're going to get.
If you can't see the horizon.
If you can't see, and the thing is with fishing free on one spot, you sort of get sort of channeled into chucking at one area, and it's very rare that even at night you sort of deviate from that area.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't see as much as what's going on at night. I know that, but provided you haven't wiped out all of your rods and you've got one of your rods left out, you can get the other 2 rods out if you're putting your fishing rods back out, and you can also spom. Because if you are spomming and you can follow your spom, when the spod hits the water, put your tip in the water and just flick the line up, and you'll see the line in which it's taken, and you can roughly know from what direction you've cast if you need to adjust anything. That's how I do it. But then again, if you're going a fair bit, you sort of get in a bit of a routine of this is where I need to stand, and that's another key thing that I always say to people: stand in the same place when you cast.
Foot position.
Every time.
My casts always go where my foot points.
Yeah.
So if I've got a foot groove on the floor that I've been casting from all day, then it's
stand in the same.
It's going to be the same at night.
That's pretty much similar to how I am. If you keep everything consistent, then you're doing the best you possibly can to get everything to land.
Yeah, it might not be as good as you can do it in a day, but it'll be close.
Yeah, close enough is good enough, especially at night.
Yeah,
like when you're tired as well.
Give him some. We're never going to give all these away at this rate.
Give him some.
Give him a bucket.
Give him a bucket.
Dave, you are a winner. Let me read out another question while I write his name down. I've got one for you in a second.
That's right, it's fine.
So Richard's asked, so when using a wafter, do you always have the hook laying on the bottom?
As in flat?
Yeah.
As in, do you have it like a claw, or do you always...
Well, it depends. Like a lot of people, and this is something we done earlier on, when you're testing stuff in the margin, it looks very different to when you're chucking it out in the lake.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm fishing with a wafter, I don't necessarily want it to go straight down and the hook to lie flat. I'd rather it sort of lie almost like cocked, if you like, so the hook sort of sat slightly up, because for me, the idea of like a wafter is you want it as neutrally buoyant as possible.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't want the hook necessarily like pulling dead flat on the bottom and, you know, the bait just sitting above it. You want it to sort of slowly go down and sort of do what it should do, waft about.
Yeah.
So inevitably, when the rig's been out there for a while, the hook is going to lay flat
over time,
because the bait's going to have taken on water and it's going to become heavier. But when I'm chucking it out there, I don't necessarily want it to go in and lay flat straight away.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all exactly like what I said earlier. Rigs are a very, very personal thing, and if you look too much into how they sit, and flicking it in the margin. Truth be told,
is it going to stop a fish? Is a fish going to decide where it's going to have it if it hooks it in like that, or it's like if it's going to make that much difference to a fish, we're in trouble.
I mean, I don't think a lot of the time. Certainly, like when you're fishing for numbers of fish, I think greed far outweighs caution. If you're fishing for one fish on a spot, they can be very finicky. Yeah. And I have, believe it or not, I have fished lakes that are a little bit trickier, and I have seen them do it. The minute a second fish comes in,
different game.
The instinct of like, you're not having that, I'm having that, comes in, and they sort of drop their guard as to what's around, and it's very, very easy to catch carp when you've got a lot of carp on you. So in terms of how the hook sits, put it this way, it isn't like a priority when I chuck the rig out.
Yeah, there's other things that
as long as the hook's relatively sharp and I got a big lead on, I'm happy.
Interesting you mentioned the competitiveness though. I think that's big.
Right, another one for Darrell.
Oh.
So Henry has asked, I've been absolutely loving the big carp stories, my favourite of which has been the Yateley Carp Park episodes. Do you have any tips for fishing in weed when the water is not clear? Do you cast at showing fish or cast till a spot is found?
In weed, it depends what sort of weed it is. So many questions in carp fishing don't actually have an exact answer. That's, one sort of weed is different to another sort of weed. But for example, somewhere like Yateley, it was Canadian pondweed, so you had big beds of it, and then big barren areas up to the weed beds, and it was the polished gravel spots next to the weed beds that done the do. But you could be talking about somewhere where it's blanket weed, and then what I've just said has got no relevance to that whatsoever. So, read the question again. It sort of deviated left and right a little bit.
Yeah. So he said, do you have any tips for fishing in weed when the water is not clear? So do you cast at showing fish or cast till a spot is found?
I do different things, like if I don't know anything about the lake and I don't know where the spots are, often I'll chuck to fish with
my ball's falling down. You didn't do a very good job of sticking it up, did you?
No, breaking the gaff. But quite often I'll chuck to showing fish to start with. But as my knowledge of the lake becomes better, then I tend to fish spots because I know where they are.
Sweet. Tom, 5 essential items you don't go fishing without.
Cherry Coke.
Cherry Coke. That was always going to come in there.
Cherry Coke. My illusion for timing rigs. My pod. A lot of people give me some abuse for the pod, but I've got to be honest.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm a big fan of the pod. I've used one for years.
It's like when you have those sessions where you can't get your bank sticks in, and how infuriating is that at the beginning of a session?
It just angers me. Like I'm watching anglers there, and they are pushing bank sticks in, and then they get a bite, and where they've got like such short sticks that they can't get them in, they get a bite, and then the whole back rest comes out the ground, and I'm just like, I put my pod down, and I'm fishing within like 10 seconds, and it's set up in the van ready to go. So it's there. So I've got my Cherry Coke, my illusion, my pod, which is essential. Always have a bit of natural bait in the van, as we see when we went to Manor. I'll make no secrets about it. Natural bait where you can. Like, I don't necessarily know, like a lot of the fishing that maybe you do might not involve it, but certainly the busier places where I would go to it's a massive thing. Yeah. And it's a completely different subject, but it is a big thing.
Yeah.
And I suppose
we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, it is a good thing to talk about. It is a good thing to talk about, definitely. And I'd say Miss Bomb, because without a Spom, I wouldn't be able to put any bait out. So they're my things. But yeah, certainly the natural bait is one of the fundamentals.
We'll give a bucket away for that?
Yeah, definitely.
Now you're testing me. I have to find the...
Yeah, go on, Scott.
I got him.
Go on, Scott.
I got him.
Good.
Right, we've got another one.
Yeah.
So Curtis has asked, I'm fishing a murky water lake and the fish are often in the upper layers. Do you have some tips for how I can fish zigs effectively in this situation?
Go on, that's one for you.
My only real experience with zig fishing on a murky lake was the fact that they absolutely loved a white hook bait.
White.
And the only thing I can put it down to is the visual side of things.
Is that as a single hook bait zig or one that you're feeding over?
As a single.
As a single.
Yeah, I used to fish a park lake down in Kent, and that was very, very murky. And you used to fish up into where the birds had been fed.
Yes.
Now I know, obviously, people are feeding bread. The white is a bit of a, it's sort of a bit of a similarity there. But on sort of smaller commercials that I've fished, even if you're fishing, say, on a feeder, white hook baits in murky water always seem to be the best. And certainly on zigs, they're not I mean, I don't know how good a carp's eyesight is. I can only assume from sort of the situations I've been in, but from personal experience, a white hook bait was better than any other hook bait. Yeah. And as well, if you are worried about the fish not seeing it, maybe tie a maggot off on top of the zig. Yeah. Tie a bit of a worm off on top of the zig. Something that gives it a bit of natural scent and also movement, because the carp are not necessarily attracted to the zig because it's there. They're attracted to it because of the small vibrations that the maggot might be making.
Yes.
So, yeah, white is definitely is a key hook bait colour, but topping off with some form of natural bait to make it stand out.
Give it some real world attraction.
Yeah, but that's my sort of little bit of experience on fishing murky lakes, but that's what always worked for me, and that was quite a bit of experimenting to sort of find colours, but that was probably the best colour. Yeah,
well, it's, half the battle in carp fishing is the carp knowing where your hook bait is in they have to they have to be able to either come across it by accident or see it and select it.
Yeah,
and they're like so many people aren't tuned into that, how important that is. You know, it's if they don't know it exists, what's the chance of them getting it?
Someone's going to find it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Got another one for you, for both of you. What will your approach be post spawning? Be interesting to see the difference between the two of you. I'm going to just go and try and fix the wall before it all falls off.
Right, go on, Tom. You start. Post spawning.
So after spawning, in terms of approach, like what?
Nothing. We've already had that. Really,
you know, what can you change? You're going to be fishing for probably hungrier carp.
Yeah.
I would say probably a bit warier carp. You know, they've just gone through I class it as the toughest time of year. Like for me personally, for the next few weeks, maybe even up to like 4 weeks, I'm not really going to entertain going fishing because it's a very stressful time for them. And you know, even when people are saying the fish were spawning down the other end, they do swim, you know, and there's still pressure for them. But in terms of an approach, when I go back to fishing, nothing will change because what I used before they spawned worked, and it might just mean that you've got to take more bait with you, or that the fish are going to be on edge, so you haven't got to put as much out as what you normally would. But that's me. Like maybe you might be different to that.
I don't sort of think of it as a spawning thing. You know, I just generally think that how much carp eat is determined generally by how warm the water is. That's sort of how I feel about it. When they're sort of waking up in the early spring, they're picking. They're not really up for it, you know. And my amount of spawns is often the same as yours, 8 to 10 to 12 as an opening line of attack. But in the height of summer, when I'm fishing for a lot of fish, sometimes I'll put 20 out, which I wouldn't do that in the spring. You know, so I might put a little bit more bait out. But yeah, it's different. Sometimes when they've just spawned, they just sit up and they don't want to know. On other lakes I've fished, like in Belgium, for example, they just spawned. They were just casting pink pop-ups out in the deep water and they're just mowing it up. It's there again. It's another one of those things. It's a question in fishing that hasn't actually. Your answer's right, my answer's right, and it's all different on a different day on a different.
Every time you turn up to a lake, it's different, and this is, you know, no matter what you film, the video, everything is completely different all the time. You know, the fish feed, like you say, with different water temperatures, different light levels, different air pressures, and everything changes.
Oxygen levels.
It's being able, and oxygen levels. And I know not a great deal, but I know quite a bit about the oxygen and having lived on a fishery, and it can change in an instant.
Yeah.
And when it changes, a lake can be a totally different character. And if you're there, you might not necessarily know what the oxygen level is in that lake, so you don't know that it's changing, but they're always changing, always chopping and changing. So there's so many different things, but I think ultimately you've got to go with what you know wherever, but always go in with a second approach if that's not working, or know how to change.
It's reading it, isn't it? It's that's what makes an experienced angler stand out generally, is because they understand what's happening from the signs that are coming back from the bites you're getting, the bites you're not getting, from the activity you're seeing. It's making the adjustments based on it's reading the game,
reading what's going on.
Okay, this is one that I don't think we've had before. It's from Callum. He's asked, when casting at showing fish, how long would you leave the rig in the water before giving up on that particular spot?
Okay, well, it depends on the time of day and the drop in that I got on that rod. So, sorry. Let's say it's first light in the morning and I've chucked out to a showing fish and I've got a really, really good drop on it and it doesn't go. then I might actually leave it there and see if it's going to be there at the same place tomorrow morning. But on another time, if it got a really naff drop and the sun come up and I just thought it went down a bit deep, a bit horrible out there, probably not going to do anything, I might reel it in. So again, it's reading what you think that, whether it's got a chance or whether that chance has gone. But from my experience, generally they go pretty quick. If they're going to go, not always, sometimes I've had them go the following day, but generally they go pretty quick if they're going to.
You can both answer this one, actually. Do you want to? Have you got any?
No, I'm along the same sort of lines. But you've also got to think where the fish show, if you ever watch them from above, they don't go up and back down in the same place. So casting to a shown fish, it might pay sometimes to put one left or right of where it's shown, because it might have come from over there and it might come up and over. So yeah, but other than that, there isn't. Casting to shown fish is a bit of an open method, and sometimes it does work, and sometimes it's like, well, you might have found something out that you might not necessarily have known if you hadn't seen a fish show there.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, sometimes a fish will let you know something's out there that you didn't know was there.
Yeah,
it might be a little shallow spot, it could be anything.
Yeah. Craig has asked, this is for both of you. Could you, if you could only use one flavour boilie range for the whole year, which one would it be and why?
Go on, Tom.
So obviously, being with sticking, I would go. I would use
Cell.
Cell. I would use krill. Now, a lot of people would be like krill in the winter, but what I always say to people, and I see this happen a lot, is you spend. Certainly, since I've joined a syndicate, people bait up in the summer. Now, obviously, fishing linear, day tickets, you can't bait up. No matter what people say, you can't. But you go through the whole year when the carp are the easiest to catch using, say, krill, and then it comes to the winter when predominantly they become harder to catch, and then you decide to change the complete diet. Now, Manila works amazingly in the winter, but they're used to eating the krill, so from my personal, I won't stop using it until I feel that it's completely dried up. And then if it has dried up, then I'll make a change. But you're not using it in as much quantity, but the fish are still used to eating it. But like I say, you're not putting as much of it out. So that, from my point of view, that's how I'd go. Like, I don't,
No, I think what you said at the beginning of that is the most important thing. If you're fishing somewhere where a bait gets established, as in like everyone's on it, which is the best time, that's when they're getting it and they know what it is. When you get to the back end of the year, like you say, you just use less of it, but they're still looking for it. So I would just, if I was fishing somewhere all year round, I would look to try and think about the bait that I'm using. If I'm going to be there all year, I want one that works all year, but I won't fight against other people. If there's loads of people putting in a certain bait, then there's no harm in buying a tub of that and getting a kilo of that as well. But I remember fishing Essex Manor, a lake that's always seen loads and loads and loads of bait. People pre-baiting were 10 to 15 kilos, like multiple people. So if you got...
What, just putting the whole lot in it once?
Yes.
I witnessed it. I had one session on
just getting a bag and just going...
in a margin.
Putting 3 rods out, scooping their bait and going home, and then the next person turning up and
not
knowing what they've just done and doing the same, thinking that they've reinvented the wheel,
So, like, I fished the spring on there, I was hardly putting any bait out, and then it got to summer, everyone was filling it in, and then when it came to the autumn, all you need is 1 15mm cell wherever a fish jumped. It was just, but you couldn't. You didn't need to fill it in, but they were hardly eating, but they were still, because they've got so tuned to it, they would still pick up a 15mm cell.
Do you guys do any bait prep, like pre-soaking or adding liquids to your spod mix and boilies? Also, do you think pre-soaking is more for shorter sessions?
Cool. So again, this is another thing that fishing the busier lakes, you come to sort of learn and adapt your bait. So everyone's turning up Friday or on a Sunday, whenever, opening their bag of boilies, opening a tub of 6-8 cans of sweet corn, tipping it all in a bucket, and you do not know who has been in that peg before you. Now, when you're fishing there and someone starts putting a load of bait out and he packs up and someone goes around and sets up, you're like, I won't put any more bait out, mate. There's already 5 kilo down there. So it's exactly like when you go to France. The first night in France, you think you're the only person that's ever put 5 kilos of boilers in that lake. And everyone does it. They turn up, throw in stick, put their 5 kilo out, and you think you're the only one that's done it. But you're sitting on top of old bait. So before a session, obviously if I forget, which is very rare, 48 hours before I go, I'll empty a certain amount of boilers, not loads, 2-3 kilos, I don't want to waste them, into a bucket of water, add some of the matching glug and fill them so they're just above, so they're just submerged underwater, and then when I go, my bait's washed out, ready to go. And it just sort of puts you on the front foot a bit. I'm not saying it's the difference between catching and not catching, but I don't want to put fresh bait on top of old bait. I'd rather put semi-old bait, or what I'm trying to make look like old bait, on top of old bait. So that's how I would sort of prep any bait. In terms of stuff like hemp, sweet corn, what can you do to them? You can't. They're a natural bait as such. They're as good as what you're going to get, whether you get them from manufacturer frozen or you get them out of a jar. They're as good as they're going to get. So with a boilie, there's always little things you can do.
Yeah, my take on, like Tom touched on, washing out bait. That is something that I do quite a bit myself when I'm fishing pressured lakes. But I don't think of it as washing out, as in the word washing out suggests that you're taking the attractors out of it. Like, for some people, will be thinking that. I'm not saying you, but
I know what you mean.
Some people watching will be thinking washing bait out means washing attractors out. I actually think of it, if you put the bait in the lake, the water comes into the bait, the attractors go out. So in a bucket, it's concentrated. There isn't much water in there. So the bait actually becomes saturated in its attractors, but I think it becomes supercharged because it's now water is moving through it. Everything is moving in the bait inside it. It's activated, it's in the water.
It's already breaking down, isn't it?
And I think that's another thing as well. It makes it more digestible when they start feeding.
Easier
if you
to
put
eat.
boilers in straight out of the bag when you turn up, we all know carp love boilers, but for them to sit there, they're almost having to chew them. Whereas when they're feeding on washed out baits, it becomes a point where they're almost drinking them because they're going in and they're minimal crushing. And obviously, the more energy they're using crushing up, they're going to get bored. That's the way I look at it. Maybe they're going to get bored. Like, I wouldn't want to sit there and eat a load of hard-boiled sweets, but I'd quite happily sit there and eat a pack of biscuits that I dipped in a coffee. Do you know what I mean? That's the way I look at it.
The biscuit in a tea, though, that's
it's easier to eat, isn't it?
Great analogy, that is.
Yeah.
If you tried to eat a whole pack of digestives without having a drink,
you'd be
that
dry.
would be hard work.
You wouldn't be able to speak after half the pack.
But if you don't each one,
it'd be easy to eat. And that's the way. And people say to me, you've got mad theories when it comes to things, but I liken them. That's their environment. If they're going to feed, try and make it easy for them to feed.
Give him a bucket.
Now you're testing me.
Prep man.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my theory. So yeah.
Let me do
Ask
another
a question
and I'll find him.
Okay.
Okay. I did have one. Okay, a quick one for you, Richard. It's from Richard for Tom. The maggot rig you use with the illusion line, would you use that rig fishing over silt?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And that's something we covered today.
Lead clip, helicopter, both?
No, I always fish a lead clip.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I'm very one-dimensional in the type of fishing that I do. With a lead clip, I can change between that rig, a hinge stiff rig, and I can also put a zig on it. I don't fish a lot of lakes that are mega weedy. Obviously, if I did fish lakes that were weedy, I could chop and change, but for where I go, that is the best.
I'm guessing he's asking that, saying when he's saying he's silty, his idea is the lead's in the silt, plugged out the way, your illusion's coming out like that.
That is exactly what I said earlier.
You're fishing longer to allow for that.
And that's another thing, what I touched on earlier is, no matter what you think you're finding on the bottom of that lake, it's not what you think it is.
It's not as good as you think it is.
No, not in and I can... When people are clipping up spots and they're doing it with soft rods, you cannot feel anything with a soft rod.
No.
You need the stiffest rod possible because you can sort of gauge when you're pulling it how hard that lead's pulling back, so you'll know roughly what you feel. So by using a long, like my rigs are sort of 12 to 14, sometimes up to 16 inches long. Even if it is firm, with the way the lead goes into the bottom and the way that your anti-tangle sleeve is, unless that anti-tangle sleeve is laying flat on the bottom, you are always going to have an element of kick in it. And if you're fishing with a short rig, it's going to kick up and not present well. But at least with a long rig, if your lead goes into the silt a couple of inches, you've got 10 inches to lay flat. So that's why I use a long rig. But you can use it in silt. Yes, you can use it on a lead clip.
It's long enough to allow for
So it's basically to fish in every situation, that rig.
Yeah.
I know what your answer will be to this one. So what's your opinion and the best time of year for carp fishing? So this guy says he always personally does better in the winter. Can never get them in the summer. Any tips? So when would you go fishing?
I used to just want to fish 3 nights a week, every week. You know, that's how I used to fish. Now, with a bit of experience, I like to go really hard when it's good and have gaps in between, because I think that keeps me keener. And I think if you really want to really terrorise somewhere, there's no better formula than being there a lot during the best times of the year. So May is an absolute hero month. The trouble is the banks are busy, so May is my favourite month of the year, and I try to do as much fishing as humanly possible, as I have done this May. But I also absolutely love October. I find that people are waning, whereas the banks are absolutely mobbed in May. Come October, you just start seeing the regulars not be there as often as they used to be, and I thrive on space. You know, give me enough room to operate, and I don't care if it's tough. I can find an opportunity. So, and the fish look lovely in October. They look lovely in May as well. But when the leaves all start to turn, it's hard to beat October. I think for the bit of space, cooler temperatures, and plump carp. Should we give him a bucket?
Oh, don't do that to me.
Come on, Scott, you got to keep track of them.
I've got two lots of people asking me, two lots of comment boxes asking me questions. So I have to let me find that person. What was the question about?
About
what's your favourite time of year? I know you said.
What's your favourite time of year, Tom?
So I would say winter, and again, because the lakes that I go to have got a good stock of fish. Carp fishing in the winter can be very, very rewarding, especially if you land on them, because they don't go far.
Stay there.
And you can almost, in the spring, they're open for abuse. You know, it's a very, very good time of year to go carp fishing. You know, a lot of people are outgoing, but you're in more competition with the anglers than what you are the carp. Whereas when you're in fishing in the winter, if you find them, and you know, they can be very easy to find and they can be very hard to find.
Yeah.
You can catch and you know they're not going to move. So if you've had a good trip, say you've done 24 hours and you've had a few, and I think, do you know what, I could really do with a good night's sleep. I know I'm going to wake up in the morning and they're not going to have gone anywhere. No. They're going to stay there. And that's the type of fishing I love. Like, you know, I'm not looking to go out there and catch one fish in the winter. I want to go and have a good time.
Yeah.
You know, it's predominantly going to be cold, wet, windy, horrible, and if you can get on the fish in the winter, it's a very, very good time to go. And I think summer fishing is harder, and I know a lot of people might think that's mad, but the fish are a lot more active. They're a lot more like skitty when it comes to the summer. They're moving around, like they've just spawned, they're in the edge, they're wary of what's going on, and in the winter they're happily sat somewhere, they're at their biggest weight, or they're nearly peaking at their biggest weight, and once you catch one, it can be very easy to get a number of fish, and you know full well that regardless if the weather changes or you get people turn up either side of you, they're not going to move off, so they can be open to a real sort of hammering if you get on them.
Yeah.
I found the guy.
So how many buckets have we given away?
I think it's
so far?
5. 2, 4, 5. Yeah.
Should we draw the reels now?
Do you want to do it now?
Well, no, do you want to do it at the end? I was thinking it's in the middle, isn't it? So we can...
Well, it depends. I was just going to run this for kind of however long. So
okay.
Should we?
It's up to you. I'm in no pressure. It's not like I'm desperate to give them
away.
We
can do it. I've got everyone's names.
Yeah, give them away, lads.
Yeah,
a lovely set of reels.
Right.
Someone's just about to be jumping around the front room.
Yeah,
or work wherever you are.
As if you've watched our previous draws, you'll see how we do them. I'm going to pull up another screen that has got a little box on it. There's a guy called Carl on there. He's not the winner. He's just the first name that comes up on the randomizer. I mean, Carl could come up again, so Carl could win. But all we're going to do, I'm going to let you press the button.
Don't press the wrong one.
So all you need to do is press the rerun button.
Which is that?
Everyone's names are. So I'm just going to show this quickly. Can I show this here? Right, here's everyone's names, just so you've got a little bit of clarity. So people's names are there. I'm not going to show everyone, but there you go. So let me just go back down to here. Right, it's all on you. The pressure is on. Just press there. Just one click. Oh, hold on.
You pressed it.
No. There was a guy on there called Luke Herring.
Right.
So Luke. So we must have pressed it. And Luke Herring has won. That's only fair because it had changed already.
Okay.
I think that's
okay.
It had changed from Carl to Luke. It changed from Luke. Yeah. From Carl to Luke. Okay. So it's only fair.
Herring.
Luke Herring.
don't know. The name rings a bell. I think I've sold him a book.
Luke's having takeaway for dinner tonight.
It's only because we went down and came back up. So
yeah.
It
didn't go to plan that, but Luke Herring, you've just won yourself 3 bases, lads.
He might have done it when I went down, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
okay.
It's fine.
It's good. Take them out of the way now.
Right. Let me go back.
So we've got 5 buckets to go.
Yeah, we've still got five of these little spring... what are they? Sticky bait things?
Sticky bait packs. Spring.
Right, let's get another question, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's have a look. I've done that one already. So, hi, this is from Chase. Hi, Tom and Darrell. Do you think the moon phases affect the captures of big fish? Do you have a preference for certain moon phases?
Well, you know, that you can't say with any clarity, but I caught biggest mirror carp that I've ever caught in my life on the full moon. The biggest common that I've ever caught in my whole life on the full moon. I've caught several 50-pounders in the UK on the full moon, several 50-pounders on the new moon. So I caught a 64-pounder out of Orient on the full moon once. I think there's something in it.
Oh, I'm not going to argue with you. I've never been into watching it, because what I always say to people is, if you looked at everything and you stacked all the odds against you, you would never go fishing at the time that you can actually get out and go. Obviously, a lot more people look into it, so therefore people will book time off, so there's going to be more people on the bank.
Yeah.
And no, I don't read into it, like from a personal point of view, but I caught the box common out of St John's
on
a full moon. So I am not going to argue with anybody when it comes to it, and there has to be something in it.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's fish dependent, the individual.
I think it's light levels. I think one of the biggest things is light levels. Even on nights where it might be cloudy but it's a full moon, I just think carp, when it comes to coming out of winter and you get the extra couple of hours of daylight, a lake might not have done a bite for ages. It might still be like this spring has been freezing, but I've had a really good spring. Not because I think anything's changed. I think the light levels, and with different moons, you've got different light levels, and it just allows fish. I think they feed differently with them. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm into it. I hold my hands up. I don't study it, but I did catch my biggest common on a full moon. So I'm not going to.
I don't like live and die by it. As in, like, I don't worry about. I go when I can.
Yeah.
You know, and I when I'm booking my big sessions, I do try and go round. I try and book it alongside a moon phase. But for example, when we caught the big common recently out of Oxley's, we knew it was going to be busy, right? And my argument was, I'm going to get in the swim first. I'm not going to worry about getting in the swim on the full moon. I'm going to get in the swim first. And if I don't catch one of the big uns, then I've had my turn.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because someone's going to go in there after me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so I just went in there, caught it before the full moon, but it was a new moon, wasn't it?
New moon, I think.
It was the new moon for the new moon for Oxley's, but the full moon we weren't worried. We just basically everyone knew the swim that I was going to try and get into, and it was just get in that swim as quickly as possible and catch what you're going to catch before someone else does.
Yeah, but I think if they're going to come out, they're going to come out.
Yeah.
But like you say, when you're planning your big trips away, you need to do everything to stack the odds in your favour.
Yeah.
But what I say to people is, don't think that the weekend you've got off of work because it's middle of the month, middle of the moon or whatever, you can't go.
No.
Because carp will come out whenever. But maybe there is something in it. Like I said, I don't read into it, but I'm not going to ever turn around to someone and say, you don't know what you're going on about, because everyone's different, and that's what makes fishing, that's what I love about fishing, is everybody has a different outlook on it.
Yeah.
And when you've caught that many big fish, I'm not going to sit here and say, no, like, you know, there's something in it when you're catching that many.
Yeah, there's something in it.
Let's go with this is from Harry for Tom. Well, I guess you could both do this one. What is your most significant catch in recent years, and what made it special for you?
So the one I just touched on was the box common, because I fished linear for a very long time, and what a lot of people always used to say to me is, you ain't going to catch them old fish doing what you're doing. But my argument to that is, if you catch enough of them, eventually it will feed with them. And the night of that capture, I obviously had my little one with me, and the first night she was a bit unsettled, so I chucked some zigs out just to try and get a couple of bites, caught a couple. The second night she was a lot more settled. I put some bait out, I started catching consistently, I had a double take, and it was that. And that to me is like, not just because my daughter was there, that makes it even more special, the fact that I could wake her up and tell her that I'd caught the biggest fish in the lake, but because I'd fished there for so many years.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it was one of them in the end. It was either the fish is going to die, or I'm going to die, or I'm going to catch it. That was the attitude I had with it. And not that I'm going to lay off fishing up there, because I said I love linear, but I won't be able to walk on St John's with the same outlook as what I had before, because I've caught. That was the fish if I wanted to catch, I've gone and caught it. And Sod's Law says I'd go back there and do one trip and I'd catch it. I will go back and fish it, but like, to know that I caught it how I would always fish is probably the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
What about you, Darrell?
I think, like Tom said, like sometimes when you tried for a long time to catch a fish, like years ago I fished the quarry in Chelmsford, and I spent over 350 nights fishing the quarry before I caught the biggest two fish in the lake. So like the sense of elation after wanting them for so long was, you know, really special. Catching chunky at Yateley, as I told in the Yateley story with my angling idle terrier, and then next to him again, really special. But I would say, like, I think chunky was up there. I think because I didn't think I could catch from there, and then when you do, it was like my leg was shaking like a shitting dog. I mean it. It was shaking as it was coming towards the net. But I suppose catching, I caught a 74 pounder on my mum's birthday, the year she died. So like she died in the summer, and then the following May, it was her birthday, news feed come up on my phone, saw it was that, little lump in my throat, gets to take the biggest fish in the lake, 74 pounder, playing it on the full moon. Like, it was, I did have a bit of a grin, smiling at the moon, thinking thank you. So yeah, I suppose that's got to be number one.
Richard Hyam has asked, if fishing a lake that is crystal clear water, do you think bright high-vis pop-ups can spook bigger fish, and it's better to use darker colours?
Who's that to?
That's for both of you. There's no.
Darrell.
I'll answer that.
What's crystal clear water?
I think that because of the Ronnie rig, the Chod rig, and pop-ups in recent years, those rigs are so efficient. You know, as in there. Remember a minute ago I said that the most important thing is the fish knowing that the hook bait's there, being aware of it. You know, having there it is. That I can take that if I want it.
Yeah.
I think those rigs alone, and the fashion and the trends in carp fishing have made boilies more scary. So what was the question again exactly?
If fishing a lake that is crystal clear water, do you think bright high-vis pop-ups?
So those rigs with bright pop-ups that I've sung hymns about on all the videos, bright singles, cast at jumping fish. Like in recent years, in a lot of my own fishing, I've been fishing tigers, and I've been very, very successful doing so. Not saying that single pop-ups from the Ronnie rigs don't catch fish, but fish are certainly avoiding. I've watched them come in, eat bait, and not take the hook bait too many times. Which that rig is always cocked. It's always going to work, but you know, if you're fishing for pressure carp that have all been dragged out several times on bright baits, then you know the West Warwick was a great example. Fishing there for jumping fish 4 or 5 mornings on the trot, never caught anything. And you know you can only do, let's call it, it's insanity if you continue to do the same thing expecting a different result. And I wasn't catching doing that. Next time I went up there with maggots, cast a bag of maggots at showing fish, it was in the water 5 minutes. So if you're fishing where the fish are and in clear water and you're not getting the reaction you want, after a few times you've got to do something different.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got one from Henry for you, Darrell, as well. I have recently started sharpening hooks for myself and know you love to do the same. Is there a time where you would resharpen an already sharpened hook after one use, or throw it away?
Well, Tom answer this, because I know he doesn't sharpen his. So
again, it's a bit like the moon thing. It's a personal thing.
Yeah.
For the type of fishing that I do, sharpening a hook to me, it's not worth doing. It's time that I'm being taken away from fishing. And again, like we've said before, when carp are feeding on spots, certainly when I'm fishing wafters, because a lot of my fishing is fishing with a wafter, double plastic corn, small trim down 10 miller, so it's the hook sitting relatively low. If a fish brushes out on gravel, now, and as well, what a lot of people sort of dismiss is the fact that there isn't just carp in these lakes. And I've watched it firsthand on videos where people are putting bits of corn on top of baits, and there's little roach coming in, picking them up, throwing the hook around. Now, if that hook touches something and it burrs the end of it over,
you're not fishing.
You're not fishing. So for me, the way I go is straight out the packet and a big lead, and if I bring it in and it feels all right, I'll put it back out. Now, I'm not promoting that by putting a blunt hook out, I'm going to lose fish, because if I ever got to a point where I was losing fish, I would give up carp fishing, because ultimately what I'm trying to do is everything I hook, I try to land. So, but I feel for the type of fishing that I do, if I was going on somewhere and I was fishing from in the edge and I could see them and I was watching them and, I had one chance to get a bite over, say, a week session, then I would maybe do it because it would stack everything in my favour. But for what fishing I do, I personally don't do it. But I have got people want to do it. If they've got confidence in doing it, it's like anything. Like I said earlier, with the hook pattern. If you're confident in the rig that you chuck out, it doesn't matter what anyone else around you's doing. That's how I am. Yeah. I know you've got a different view.
What was the exact question? Or have you gone past it?
Oh, I've gone past it.
So
basically, would you resharpen an already sharpened hook?
So from that point of view, I never resharpen the hook. Once you've taken it back as fine as you do, there's no recovery. You could end up you could if you really wanted to, but it's not something that I do. But just touching on the different sort of, say, Tom's saying he doesn't, I do. He's thinking of a competitive feeding situation, and if the fish spits it out, you're going to get another bite of the cherry. That's how you're thinking. You're going to get another bite of the cherry. Yeah. Whereas my mindset is along the lines of, I might only get one fish come onto the spot, might be super cautious, and if he puts it in his mouth, I want him on the end. People say if your hook's blunt, you're gonna lose fish, right? You touch on that. People say that, don't they?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest load of horse shit in carp fishing, right? Right, because the hook sharpness, all that determines is whether you get the pickup. That's all it's gonna. It's only going to affect that. It's either going to get pricked or it's not. Whether it's sharp or not, it will have zero relevance on whether it stays on. That's more to do with where you hook it, the hook pattern you've got on, and other factors. The sharpness, I feel, is irrelevant in hook to land ratio unless you're going to be really pulling in snag fishing situations. And in that situation, I don't think a sharpened hook is the edge, because they can cut in the fish's mouth under a lot of pressure.
Cool. Right, this is one from Reese. He's asked a question for Darrell. Would you fish slack lines, and when do you fish tight lines? I've never known what way to fish.
When would I fish slack? When would I fish tight? I will fish slack if the undertow isn't pulling my line tight again. So if I can slacken it off and it will stay slack and not get tighter, then I will. If I pay it off and it goes tight, then I'm leaving it, because the more that you pay out, the more water tow resistance on the line, it will just continually tighten up. So sometimes in that situation, it's just better to leave it tight, because it's going to be tight anyway, so there's no point in having a big bow through your swim. So slack when I can, and tight when I can't.
You got any preferences?
I'm just tight lines, and again, that sort of stems from fishing Walthamstow. Even if we was fishing close range at Walthamstow, the waters there was always moving. So you always had a tow, and exactly like what Darrell said, you could spend ages peeling slack line off. It doesn't sink, it doesn't achieve anything, it just bows. And as well, when you're fishing tight lines, you get better indication, and if you're hooking fish, certainly when you're fishing free on a spot, you're just a lot more alert of what's going on. If you start seeing a line sort of kite through the water, you know that your fish might be underneath it, and a tight line is easier to deal with than a slack line.
Agreed.
This is one from David, a lake that you briefly fished when we were on a shoot earlier, late last year, I think it might have been. So he said, "Evening all. I've recently joined my first syndicate, Embryo Crown Lakes." That's the
blanked.
Yeah.
It's in that film.
Is there any advice you can give me on the approach, tactics, and rigs when fishing deep water? So I have little experience fishing those depths.
I would say Crown. You most of the time you're going to want to be fishing around the edges if you can, because the water is shallow around the edges, and the fish will be much more likely to encounter your rigs close to the edges. But I would, in hindsight, after our little blank there, I'm more than certain that I could do some really good angling there on adjustable zig rigs. It absolutely, there's lots of carp in there, and they jump willy-nilly over the deep water, and technically adjustable zig rigs are scary for most anglers, right? And if you're scared, you won't use it as your opening line of attack. You'd always go in with what you know. But if you have been successful on adjustable zig rigs, they are an absolute weapon, especially when zigs do fade, as in fish won't be hammered on them year in, year out. They're definitely at their most effective before people hammered the lakes on them. But yeah, Crown is wide open for the adjustable zig rig, and I'm sure if you mechanically get your head around it, and once you've caught a few on it, you could really go through that stock.
What about you, Tom? What's the deepest lake you fished?
Fished Mercer's Park. That was 40 foot.
Was it?
That was a deep one.
What was that? Bundy's Pit. That's deep, isn't it?
That's 40 foot as well.
Yeah.
50.
You caught them on adjustable. You had the biggest one out of there.
Yeah. I caught.
Surprise.
50. It's 55 foot in general, but there was rumoured to be a bit that was 65 foot.
Right.
But in the 55 foot, I caught 15 foot down, so 40 foot off the bottom in January.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mercer's we used to catch off the bottom, 40 foot down. It's a
All
bit
times
hard.
a year.
It's a bit harder to obviously feel the lead down, but then you used to catch more in the deep water in the summer, because I think the fish got to a point where they were not hot, but they were bored of the heat.
Yeah.
And they were bored of sitting in the upper layers where they were getting bashed by the boats. Every time they come up in the morning, they were like, what's the point of this? They used to go down, and you'd be sat there middle of the day, 2-3 o'clock on a summer's afternoon, rips off 40 foot down.
It's funny you should say that. At Orient, so in the spring, fish come to the shallow water there. Like in May, you catch them in 1 metre of water. In June, sometimes you catch them in 2 or 3 metres. By the end of June, when it's scorching red hot,
right down,
they're gone. Like, no one sees anything.
Yeah.
They are out in the deepest water you can imagine, 35, 40 foot of water, no bother. And no wonder I've never caught nothing in the summer. I just sat there in...
Yeah.
But I know that now. When it gets red hot on those deep lakes, they go deep.
Yeah. They have, I think it has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So yeah, they do feed in deep water even in the...
Should we have a bucket for that?
Bucket, yeah.
Yeah, still got his name, so that's fine. David. Right. Question for both of you. When would you use backleads?
I don't
Come
even
on,
know. I don't
expand a little bit.
I don't own a backled.
Why wouldn't you use a backlid? Why?
I've seen a lot of disasters happen with backleds. Now, don't get me wrong.
As in hooked fish round the edge.
Yeah, I fish on a lot of busy lakes, and sometimes when the guy next to you is backleaded, it is a godsend because they kite and they go over. But what I think people dismiss with a backled is when that lead goes down, their line isn't pinned down like they think it is.
No, it's cutting over stuff.
No lake, no matter how it's dug, even if it's machine dug, is dead flat. It will always have like dips and rivets in it. And the amount of times I've seen people, because let's be honest, if you are going to backled, have your tips that are at the front of the peg, so you're backleaded off the front of the swim. Because I see people playing carp, and you can see what's going to happen, and it goes round the inside between the tip and the bank, and you can't lift the rod up quick enough to sort the problem
out. There's no recovery.
And then you've got a fish that's tethered on your lines right in front of your swim. So I think you can deal with a situation better without backleds, for the pure fact that you can see what's going on. That's my personal view on them.
I can see exactly, like in a situation where you're fishing, you know you're going to get several bites, or you think you're going to get several bites, and the chances are it's going to end up wrapped up around one of the backleds, isn't it? Chances are, if you think that you're fishing for somewhere that's rock hard, and you think that might help you get the bite in the first place. You know, at Yateley I used backleds because there was no weed between me and the spot, and when I caught one, or I got a take, that was the most important bit, getting that one bite. Whereas, if you if you're using backleads and the fish picks up the line, there's no recovery.
No.
Like if you're fishing 3 rods tight and the line start bleeping, you can lift and go under, can't you?
You can move.
You can move. But once you've picked up a backlead, I mean, you've had a fish go through a line that's got a backlead on, it's all over. It's mess.
Brandon has asked, as a younger angler only getting into fishing in the past 2 years, I've only had 120 and a few mid doubles, and have tried various rigs that I make myself and know they're absolutely fine. But once they're out in the water and seeing other people getting bites, I start to doubt them. Is that a normal thing? And any wise words from you older fellas?
Sorry.
No
say that
offence.
Am I older? Am I?
So if you've got your rigs out,
I'm 29.
where you've caught a few fish on them. So imagine you're on B1 or B2 and you've cast out. You've got rigs out there that you know work because you've caught fish on them before, and then you're not getting any bites and people around you are catching fish. Is it a natural thing to just... should you be doubting what you're doing, or would you just, just sit out and wait,
I never doubt.
No one's sitting around him bashing him up. It just ain't happening.
I never doubt what I'm doing. But if you're saying he's only been fishing for a couple of years, there might be some slight things that maybe that you could just go and speak to him, just see if there's something slightly different to what they're doing to you, and sort of base your catches on what they're catching. And if you're getting out caught by a certain person or a few other anglers, there's no harm in going and speak. And if someone's been fishing for a couple of years, then someone should. If you go and ask somebody, then they should give you a hand, and they should give you they should help you. But there's not going to be a rig that you put in that lake that a fish is going to swim by that say £25 and look at it and think, I'm not eating that rig because it's tied out of this or that. So if your rig is in front of that carp, you will catch one on the rig that you're confident in using. But it always pays to just have a little look at see what other people are doing.
When we were doing the big carp story the other day, we were talking about St Ives, and then
I forgot the rig tonight.
Have you?
I'll bring it tomorrow.
I was going to say, when you were telling that story, you mentioned about going round to a guy's swim that caught the fish, and he saw that he caught on a yellow pop-up.
Yeah.
So you were like, got that one, it's in there.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff is the same as what you're saying.
Yeah. It's no harm in looking, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. You've got to take... But the question was actually aimed saying, if you're confident in what you're doing and people are catching around you and you're not, you should be questioning something. If everyone's catching around you, why aren't you catching? Is it because you haven't got a nice clear spot in front of you? That could be. I'm thinking. I've been in swims and I've had people either side of me. They've got lovely features in their swim, and I've just got desperately deep no hope. And that can be a situation. But generally, if people are catching around you and you're not questioning, you should be questioning everything. Am I on the right spot? Have I put the right bait on? You should be questioning it until you're catching.
Yeah. Right. Let's have a little look here. Just trying to find.
It's like a little like mouth spray, isn't it?
Tastes nice, that as well. Does actually taste nice.
Does it?
Yeah, I'm not promoting
to.
So
Christian has asked. My question is to all. I mean, I won't really answer this, but I've just started on a new...
Scott, this one's for you.
I'm not fishing so long. I've just started on a new syndicate and was just wondering what your approaches would be for starting on a new water.
Go on, Tom.
So, having just joined the syndicate after 12 or 13 years, I think it... What am I now? 29. 13 years since I last joined the syndicate. My approach is absolutely no different to what I do now. And I touched on this in a recent film that I've done with Fox. A lake is only a certain way because that's how the owner chooses to run it. And a lot of people think that going from fishing a day ticket to a syndicate, you've got to do a lot of different stuff. Now, they are just carp and they swim around. Yes, the patterns of them might be different, but you've got to always go in with what you know works. If you're joining a lake, prime example, I used to fish on Golden Gates when I used to live down this way, and I used to walk around there and I was watching all the anglers with super slack lines, chod rigs, couple of boilies, and the first trip I've done on there, I chucked a solid bag out, I caught a carp, and for some reason, for the next 6 to 8 weeks, I put chod rigs out with slack lines, and then I'm sat there looking at myself thinking, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're doing what everybody else is doing. And one of the things that I learnt from a guy who used to fish Walthamstow, he used to say to me, if you do the same as what everyone else is doing, you can only expect to catch the same as what everyone else is doing. And it's so true. Walking around a syndicate lake, they might all tell you that they're using a yellow pop-up. If a carp comes out, it's going to be on a yellow pop-up. But doing something different that you're confident in, I would say go in with what you know. And it's the same with any fishing. Like, I'm sure going in with what you know
reading
anywhere.
It as well, though, isn't it? It's reading it. Like my opening line of attack, whenever I start on somewhere new, is always the same, wherever it be. Find them, look for them, fish where they are. You know, that is priority number one, and fish with what I'm confident in. And then as my knowledge of a venue evolves, then I start to base my approach around looking for them, but also what I know. You know, so to start with, you know nothing, so you just fish where they see, and as you learn, you fish a bit more acutely. But when we fished Priory Park in the winter, it's a little park lake down the road from here. You know, everyone's down there with little scopes, you know, little park life, you know, chod rigs and Ronnie rigs. As soon as I saw it, I was like, nah, solid bags. Like, because if everyone's fishing with an inch pop up, then fish something slightly different. And the solid bag is, it's not been hammered in the same way as the chod and the Ronnie rig has in recent years. And the only time that I think at the moment that the chod or the Ronnie would have the edge over that is if you've got nuisance fish problems, because solid bags are a nightmare. If there's bream, it's just bream and tench hang themselves on.
But they are a brilliant one bite method.
Yes.
You know, I've caught carp fishing what is a conventional method feeder that you would use for match fishing, but just a bigger version. Solid bags are obviously a bit more of an effort to tie up, but certainly when you're fishing like somewhere like St John's in the winter, I'm almost sure I would outfish someone 10 to 1 if they was using a normal rig over a solid bag. Because it's just such a compact parcel of food. And again, going back to the reason why I use long rigs, because they've got a curve, like a coil in them. They're not straight. When they're feeding, they've got to take the whole rig back. And I think they just come over it and it's just one mouthful. You know, and I think, like you say, they get used to seeing like choddies or whatever with a solid bag. And you can build a spot. And I know people will be like, it's a solid bag, how do you build a spot? But if you keep chucking to the same sort of area, you've always got that bit of attraction going in the same sort of spot. And you can build an area just with solid bags.
Yeah.
Okay. No, we've got. What were we going to say? You want to give him one?
Yeah,
I'll find him.
You're fine.
Yeah. Simon has asked, "Hi Darrell, great channel and great job you guys are doing. When fishing PVA bags, what hook bait would you advise, Wafter or a bottom bait?"
I can't remember the last time I used an actual bottom bait out of the bag. I literally cannot remember. And yet, when I was fishing Yateley, St Ives, Gigantica, all those in the early 2000s, that is all I ever chucked out. But yeah, I like an element of buoyancy in my hook baits when I'm fishing bags, just because I want it to fly up into the fish's mouth. I like the idea of it sucking with a normal amount of force and ending up with a whole rig down its throat. I like the idea of that, because it's just got more chance of catching before it. The further it is back in the mouth, the more chance it's got of catching.
Let's have a little look here. Andrew has asked, "Afternoon, any tips to keep the birds off you when throwing sticking boilies?"
When was the last time you managed to use a throwing stick in the UK?
I just don't even attempt to use one anymore. You know, it's just like the problem with the throwing stick is what a lot of people do is they chuck the bait in the margins and they see it sink, and then they'll turn around to their mate and be like, they're not getting any of that. But when you throw one from a throwing stick, they've got that much spin on them. What they're not realising is that they're probably being held up for 15 seconds out there.
They go down 6 inches and then come back up,
and then they sit there. And then, like, if you put binoculars on a seagull, they don't miss. The only thing you can do is obviously put them out at night. Other than that, you know, you see people, they're putting like 3 or 4 out, then they'll put one over there. Like, they're going to trick the seagulls. The seagulls are not going to think, oh, I know what he's done there. We're going to go over there.
They work as a pack.
You know, and no matter where you go, anywhere, like, obviously you go abroad and they're not too sort of up on it, but like I swear all the lakes in the UK have got like a seagull, and as soon as a stick comes out, they like make a noise and vroom, they just flock from wherever they are. But yeah, putting boilies out in a stick in the day is not the one.
I can't remember the last time that I used a throwing stick in the UK, really. I did hear that there's this little sound box that you can buy now that makes the sound of a distressed seagull that sort of panics them and stuff.
If someone sat up with one of them next to me, I'd be going home. What's that going on?
But, yeah. I've always said I'd like a pet peregrine falcon because you could have
them circling around.
Yeah, while you're on the throwing stick.
Yeah.
But I just think, there is nothing you can do. There's nothing.
Yeah.
No.
I did have a really good one there, and a lot of people, by the way, are asking to do a video with you two together fishing.
We definitely should at some point.
Mm.
But we'll probably need another cameraman because it might be stretching Scotty a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Like he's stretched as it is. He does a lot. Bless him, old Scotty.
Yeah.
And if he had, imagine we went somewhere and started catching loads. we wouldn't be able. I wouldn't be able to recast. He wouldn't be able to recast. Hang on, we got to do this.
Yeah. The handbrake would just be on forever.
Yeah. We need another before we can go out together.
Yeah.
We're going to need another cameraman.
Yeah.
Or we might get a freelancer in to do it, but
we'll do it.
we will do it. Perhaps get a rainbow doubled up. One of the
Be nice.
fishing for monsters.
Somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Right, Richard has asked feature finding. So when you find a gravel patch with weed around it, do you fish the centre of the gravel or pull the rig to the edge of the weed?
Cool.
So now, again, for me, the reason the centre of the spot is so clear is because that's where they fed.
Yeah.
If the outside of the spot was where they wanted to feed, the spot would then be massive. So if you find in a small spot, like when we fished on Manor, it was quite obvious that the spot that... Obviously, I knew the spot, but didn't know to the degree of what it looked like. I just fished slap bang in the middle of it. Now, what I'm looking to do is to create like a competitive feeding situation, and I can get a lot more carp feeding in the middle of a spot than what I can if I'm fishing on the edge of a spot. So for me, blatant is best. Fish in the middle, get the fish in the spot, get them competing, and that's how I would go. I would go down the route of making sure at night and stuff when you can't necessarily see where you chuck in, and if you go slightly off, at least if you're in the middle of the spot, you're never going to be far out. Whereas if you're on the edge of the spot and it's like curved and you go slightly to the left, you could end up in the weed, and then all you're doing is running a tight line through the spot.
Yeah, I agree with that mostly. Fishing to the where you're going to get the drop most consistently. Where if you're fishing in the middle of it, you're more likely to hit it. If you're fishing on the near edge, you could swing back too short. If you're fishing to the back edge, you can end up hung up in the weed and the same left and right. But when I've been boat fishing before, like as in drop placing from the boat in sort of 4 foot water with the weeds to the surface, and when you drop your rig in the middle of the spot, your line literally comes off the spot up to the surface like that. And if you are hand placing from the boat, then I literally just put it on the near edge, bait up in the middle of the spot with a line sort of coming to the near edge, and then none of my lines run into the spot. But if I'm casting, then like Tom said, stick it smack in the middle.
There's so many people saying that you should do a Peck versus Maker competition video. There's so many
people love that, don't they?
Yeah,
they love it.
They love a competition. I think a lot of people are always like there's always like the inter-company sort of thing as well. Like they all think that you're dead against each other. It's like, well, it's not like that. It's like, we're just mates that go fishing and don't necessarily do the same type of fishing. But
although the tackle companies are competitors, they're successful in their own rights, and they don't need to. If you are successful like the big companies are, they're not fighting with each other. They're just worried about what they're doing themselves. Which is it's not war. You don't need to be at war with your competitors.
No.
You can literally just get along happily, doing your own thing, and everyone's happy.
So Joey has asked, evening from France, how do you spot fish in a big lake like Lac de Deux or Cassien or Orient due to the big wind and big waves?
You don't. Or at Orient, when I went there the first time, I thought, no one's going to look at the lake like I do. Oh man, I spent a month blanking and saw nothing. And in the end, you stop looking because you don't see anything. Generally at Orient, they don't show much. Like they really don't. I have seen them occasionally, but bear in mind I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Generally, you see them swimming. That's if you're gonna see them, that's tend to be how you do. And on those big lakes, quite often it's trial and error. You give it a couple of nights in a zone. If you haven't seen anything, you get on the move, try somewhere else. And just keep looking, keep searching, keep trying, and eventually you run into each other. Eventually.
The solid bag rig. How do you make the perfect solid bag rig? That's from Jonathan.
Just a bit of braid for me. What about you?
How would you... I mean, we've got a Peckers Teckers on that, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, so he's obviously a member of CarpFix if he's watching.
Yeah.
So you can watch my version of how I fish a solid bag, but I'm guessing Tom's is very similar.
Yeah. You got any little tips?
There isn't really a way you can butter up a solid bag rig. I suppose the only thing that I'd probably do different to most is I would use a rig of about sort of 6 to 8 inches in a bag.
Okay.
Even if I'm fishing a small bag, I don't really mind if the rig's sort of concertinaed up and it's a bit of a mess as such. But really, you're just fishing a piece of braid with a hook, and you're relying on the fish sucking the whole lot up in one go, that rig flying back. And you can't really tie a fancy rig in a solid because you're just chucking it in a ball. Yeah. And it's more how you place it in the bag, how the lead sits and what bait you put in it. Yeah. But solid bag rig, very, very simple. Probably the rig that we all used to use like when we first started out.
Not that's not.
Yeah, that's it. And I've never really deviated much from it now.
It works though, doesn't it? Everyone's looking for the new masterpiece. The magic. The steroids of weight training. It's just not there. It's simple tech.
Luke has asked, what's a good starting depth for adjustable zigs? When would you start using?
Have you done any adjustable zig fishing?
I have done them. Again, something that I've not done a lot of. I was always very dubious about not how to set them up because I know how to set them up, but if I'm fishing in 20 foot, when I went to Gigantica, the first time I went there, it was 22 foot from Coe's Point where I was fishing. And I was fishing 18-foot zigs straight off the lead. Yeah. And I mean, I ended up catching 24 fish in 3 days by putting them zigs out. Very hard work. Yeah. If I'd have known what I know now back then about adjustable zigs, I don't necessarily think I'd have caught them. It would have been easier. Yeah. But the way that the new adjustable kits are, there's a couple of companies that make them. They are almost tangle proof now, and if you've got a pair of binoculars, they are a massively effective way of fishing because you haven't got to keep bringing them in and re-chucking them. And I've been next to people that have, even fishing in shallower water, they've hammered me on them because they can change so quickly. And I think another thing with them is, and a lot of people sort of think I'm mad, but if I'm zig fishing and I haven't had a bite, I'll literally pick the rod up and just pull it back and drop it back down. And I think going back to earlier on about the murky water and adding a bit of natural bait on top, zigs are very, very good just after you've cast them out. Yeah. And that's because I think on the cast they twist, and then as they're coming up through the water, they're moving. And because the carp are predatory, I think they swipe at them a lot more. Yeah. When you've got what I would say a stale zig that's been out there for a few hours, same as when you're fishing them when it's flat calm. Yeah. They're never as good. They need a bit of ripple. They need to be broken up. You're 1 minute you're asking a carp to try and pick a bait up on the bottom that you've tried to hide, and then the next thing you're asking it to pick a bait up that's anchored off the bottom that's got a black piece of foam on it. So it's in terms of adjustables.
What about sediment? Does that come into your mind?
Yeah, massively. If you're watching your lines and you can see them going out, and
do you think it stops the fish taking them?
I'll pull it. I'll pull my rig. Yeah, because I think they can see them.
So you're pulling it not just for the movement, but to dislodge the sediment. Yeah.
Whether it does or not, I don't know. Yeah. But on numerous occasions I've pulled them. 10 minutes later, it's gone. I don't know whether that's a thing. But yeah, going back to the adjustables, now the kits that are available, I use them a lot more because they are very easy to use now.
Yeah. No, I've done a little bit of it, not loads. I've caught them out of Essex Man and I caught them out of Bundy's and a couple of other places. But yeah, the question was about the depth, wasn't it?
Yeah, like what I think he was trying to say. What depth would you start using them?
Well, my favourite depth for zig rigs is 4 to 5 foot down. If you're going to fish them through the night and into that early morning period, that's where I've done the best, 4 to 5 foot down. But that is seasonal. At Bundy's I caught that big and 15 foot down. The rig had been at 9, I think, or 9 or 12, and I literally just pulled it down to 15, walked up the steps, sat down, and the rod tip just pulled round to straight away. I've literally just changed it. So yeah, I think 15 foot down from the surface is the deepest that I've really done on adjustable. That's generally fishing up near the top, and yeah, anywhere in the top 7 foot is generally good, But you've got to fish to conditions. So when we were at Berners, I caught one at, I think it was like a 9 foot zig to start with, and then as the morning wore on, I chased them up through the levels, and then I chased them back down in the evening, and I did that without adjustables. But that's my starting point through the night with 4 to 5 foot down. But you can change that if it's really windy and a bit cooler than a bit deeper, and if it's really flat and a bit hot, maybe a bit higher. You know?
There was a guy earlier. I can't find his question again, but he basically was asking for some casting tips. So he was asking how tall you are, and what rods you use. So whether you use 12 or 13 foot, and if you can just give. I mean, we'll do a proper techers video on how you do
something
this.
we plan to do.
Yeah,
but everyone seems to think because I'm 6'3", 6'4", that is a huge part of how far I can cast. Which there might be something in that, but Damien Clark, who works at Corda, when we have rod testing days. He probably weighs, I don't know, I might be wrong, around 10 stone, I reckon. I weigh 15 stone. So effectively, I'm 50% heavier. He's casting like half a wrap shorter than me, right? So that shows that there isn't that much in it. Maybe his technique is that much better than mine. But I would say that technique is massive in it, as in transferring the weight from back foot to front foot, using a stiff rod, because if the rod crumples under the cast, you're losing power. The diameter of the line is absolutely massive. You know, let's say I had a 12-foot 3 3/4 rod with 15-pound mono on it, and I gave it the absolute Barry McGuigan run up. I'd probably get it about 130, 135 with 15 straight through, 0.40, something like that. If I'd done that same cast with a 20-pound braid, it's going 200 yards. So that shows you what the difference in diameter of the line. So you get same force, same rod, same reel, but use a 20-pound whiplash, 20-pound marker braid from whichever company it is against a 0.4 mono, and you're going to put massive range on top. So we are going to do a techers video on casting, so look out for that.
Yeah. Someone has asked, what is... We've done this before. What is the plaque up there? Pull it down, Tom. Pull it down, Tom. What does it say? What does it say on it? What does it say?
Young Angler of the Year.
Whose is it? Who won Young Angler of the Year?
The name.
Well, there ain't no name starting with D on here.
That's because you're looking for the
It's
wrong
Scotland.
There it is.
What year
Were
is
you
that?
the last winner?
Yeah, I was. So
What did they end it after you won it?
Yeah, it's just it.
No one else did.
Yeah.
So Scott won it in 2002.
There you go. Yeah.
Was it carp fishing or match fishing?
It was match fishing.
Was it?
Yeah.
What is the plaque?
Yeah. It's good, that, isn't it?
Fair play, Scott.
Yeah. See,
Sold yourself.
I am a fisherman. To
give him a
degree.
bucket for that.
Yeah.
Shall we?
He can have a bucket for that.
I'll find him. So Luke's asked, what's a good tip for trying to find fish if you haven't seen anything boshing?
Keep looking.
Keep moving. Speak to people.
Yeah. Just because they aren't showing doesn't mean that they won't. You know, you should, realistically, you should always be looking.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I do take my foot off the gas a bit when it starts to happen. As in, once I start catching and I know that I'm fishing on the right spots, kick back a little bit. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm doing it then, you know. But if I'm not catching, I'm looking hard. You know, I'm looking hard.
Yeah. Okay. So he said, I know this is the wrong season for this question, but here goes. What is the best way to keep warm on the bank in the winter months? No matter how many layers or pairs of socks I wear, I'm always uncomfortable. Have you got any tips to keep... Like you... Right,
I've got a couple of tips.
We went to Linear, right? It was freezing cold. Like, I get cold feet. Yeah. He's walking around in sliders, like no socks.
But I don't get cold feet. I think because I fish that much, I'm like part outdoor... creature. But like there is a couple of things I do, like hot water bottle. I don't care what anybody says, have a hot water bottle, have a couple. So like, you know, if you've got your t-shirt tucked in, chuck one up your back, tuck your jumper in as well, keep your back warm. And then quite a big edge that not a lot of people do is disposable barbecues. Now if you have a barbecue in the winter, once they go out and it stops cooking whatever is on top, they stop smoking, but they're also very warm.
Yeah.
So having one around you to just give that bit of heat is enough. One thing I would say do not do is do not sit in your bivvy with your cooker on. It scares me when people do that. Yeah. I just don't like the idea of it, because when you're laying there and I see people, you can see it from the other side of the lake, you can see the little blue ring burning where they've got their burners on. When you're cold and you're warming up in the winter, it's very easy to fall asleep. and if that flame goes out, it petrifies me. I don't like it.
Yeah,
so
I would never go to sleep with it on.
No, it's easy.
Because once
doable.
you're in the sleeping bag, there's no need for it. Do you know what I mean? But sometimes in the winter, I do have it on when I'm sitting up in the evening. To be fair, when it's freezing cold and it gets dark, I go to Scott, us fishing. As soon as it gets dark and I've eaten, I'm going to bed, mate.
Yeah.
If it's cold, I'm going to bed. I get in my sleeping bag and it's all right in there, isn't it?
But I think one of the biggest keys with fishing in the winter, it's not about getting cold. Don't get wet. That's what done us when we went to hunts.
Yeah.
It rained all day.
Yeah.
And we got wet and it was cold. If you're dry, you can stay warm.
Yeah, and the t-shirt thing that's real important that connection of your bottom half of clothing and your top half, they stay like that, because that lower back bit, that's really important. That's key. Just like a hat, because say you lose all your heat through your top of your head, etc. But being tucked in and having a hat on,
just being sensible. I think in this day and age, with what clothing's available on the market,
not trainers and stuff.
Yeah, well, like me with my sliders on. But then it got to a point where my feet were that cold that they weren't cold anymore. I couldn't feel them. They were blue numb.
Yeah. Right, okay. So Danny has asked, question for all. I don't think we've done this one. I'm struggling to feel the rod down and find a decent area. So he said, I'm thinking of heading to a local member's water just to take a lead and have a few hours feeling around. What are your top tips for me to progress?
Yeah, so when you're looking for a spot then, like obviously, look from the beginning point of view, as in, what are you looking for?
So first things first, obviously looking somewhere that like I can continue to fish throughout the session.
Yeah.
So not trying to fish too far out, then the wind's changing and it then becomes unfishable. Then you're also looking for somewhere that you can present on, and I'm not overly bothered if it's silt or gravel. I would prefer to fish silt, but sometimes fishing on the gravel is good. Now, somewhere that I know my rigs are going to be presented, and always fish to a clip. And if he's saying about finding a drop, trying to feel for a drop, maybe that's like sort of what he means, trying to feel for that drop. If you're just chucking out and not trapping your line, you're not going to feel. And especially if you're fishing in shallow water, a lot of people that I take out on tutorials and I meet on the bank, they say I'm fishing in 6 foot or I can't catch a drop. Now, it's not the easiest. No. It's not the easiest thing to catch a drop in shallow water. And
this is a regular question we get. We had this last week. We had this last week.
And what a lot of people sort of make the mistake of doing is they'll find a spot with braid and they won't get a drop. And then they say, well, I put my mono on and I got a drop. Now, when you hit the clip on braid, you've got no stretch. So the minute that lead hits, if it hits it slightly hard, it falls straight away. Yeah. And when the lead falls straight away, you can't catch the drop. So always fish to a clip. So if ever I'm chucking out to a clip, I'll always hold the rod at a 45-degree angle to the lake. If you hold it dead straight out in front, you've got no sort of pullback to then feel for the drop. Whereas at the 45-degree, I'll hit the clip, slight little pullback, then it'll go forward, and I'll always feel a drop every time. So I think, the key things is to find a spot you can fish to all the time, somewhere that's very clear, and always fish to a clip. Even if you found the perfect spot, always fish to a clip. Yeah,
you should always try and, accuracy is massive, isn't it, in carp fishing? Like, all of the best anglers, the one thing that they will all have in common is that they are very accurate in what they do. It's huge. Being able to put your rig on the same spot time and time and time again and get your feed over it is it sounds basic, but that's the best anglers do that the best. Regards hitting the clip and not feeling the drop, obviously, like Tom said, the more shallow the water is and the further out you fish, the more difficult it is to feel the lead. It's like, let's say, for example, you want to feel the lead down at 4 foot at 130 yards. You need to be bloody good. I don't know many people that can do that. Feel the lead down in 4 foot at 130. You're talking 0.1% of carp anglers can do that. So practice at shorter ranges and build up. Shorter range in deep water. If you can't feel the lead down in 10 foot of water at 30-40 yards, you can't feel the lead down at all, because that's the easiest way you're ever going to learn it. So practice in deeper water, anticipating the clip, like Tom said, cushioning it so the lead's not sort of pinging down, cushioning in, and then staying in contact during descent. It's all about staying in contact with the lead and not letting the line go slack. So you need to be able to cushion in on the clip, pick up the rod on impact to take up any slack and feel it down and build up to further ranges and shallower water.
Cool. Right, Danny, his name was Danny. We're going to give him a little...
Yeah, give him a bucket.
Give him a bucket.
Yeah. How have we done?
I think that's pretty much all of them, mate, to be honest.
One for yourself, yeah? Keep it one.
Yeah, and I think it is 10.
Take it to his junior carp cup.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up. Maybe just finish on. It's going into summer. Like the fish are there or thereabouts have spawned. Maybe on a lot of lakes.
Yeah.
What if you could give a couple of bits of advice if they're going to go on a lake now? I mean, you could maybe more focus on the syndicate kind of style lakes, and Tom could focus on the day ticket lakes. What would your approach be now? Would it be any different to a few weeks ago, like in terms of how you would approach from baiting, or would you just?
Well, we've had a few questions.
Yeah, I know.
Just
to finish, just to round up. If I was going to go fishing next week, what would you tell me to do or not to do?
Right. Okay. What I would say to do is make sure you've got good call bag. Yeah. Lots of ice.
Lots of food.
Maybe a few beers in there as well. And some factor 50. But with regards to fishing, you've got to find them as always. You've got to get around the lakes. Fish could be sunning themselves in the weed beds. They on some lakes they really do like a munch up after spawning. But like again, every lake's different. So, take some tigers. I always say that.
Take some tigers.
Massively underused.
Yeah.
Massively underused.
What about you, Tom? What would you say?
I would say go. Obviously, I would always say go fishing, but don't go with the expectation that they've just finished spawning and you're going to catch loads of fish. And one biggest thing I would say is when you do catch one, just take extra care of them, because like whatever they've gone through in the last few weeks, they're probably not going to be in their best condition. They've had a hard spawn, because it's quite good because we've had such a prolonged period of warm weather now. So that's the best thing for the fish.
Yeah.
But don't go expecting that you're going to catch loads, because the fish have just gone through the worst part of the year. And if you do go and you catch, just make sure whatever you do catch, just look after them.
So someone did actually touch it. It's probably a nice thing to finish on. I did see a question about some carp care. So. Is there a certain product that you would use?
What do you mean, like on scales and
that?
Yeah,
what would you use on a fish if you got it in and it was a bit damaged? What would you do?
Did the Fox do one?
No, so Fox don't specifically do one. But I fish a lot of the RH waters, the Avenue, the Monuments and stuff like that. And Rob is as are all fishery owners, very, very up to date with. You are not fishing my lakes unless you've got carp care, which is a rule that should be on everywhere. So I got some stuff off of Rob, which is like a real vivid pink stuff, but he uses it on all of his big fish. And in my opinion, if it's good enough for Rob, then it's good enough for me to use. And when you put it on, it turns your hand pink. But I always make sure, you're not necessarily...
He's putting goo all over him.
Yeah, pink goo, get on the goo. But it's not always necessarily shown as much as what it should be. But when these fish are going back, they're all being treated. And even if it's an old wound, and just because you land a fish and you're like, well, I didn't do that, treat the fish. And I think it's a compulsory thing that if everyone should be checked for a rod license, I personally think everyone should be checked for a carp care kit, because having lived on a fishery and fish as much as I do, it's scary when someone catches one. And when you've actually stocked the fish yourself and you've seen the people that are paid for them. You're going to go to someone else's lake and you're going to catch effectively their babies. So when you're looking after them, you want to make sure they've got the utmost care. And whatever people think it washes off, it doesn't wash off. And you want to be able to put that fish back knowing you've done everything that you can to have done the best. And you see people who have caught fish that have had, I don't know, maybe an otter, the tail's been ottered or the mouth's been busted open, and they've treated it and they come out a year later and it's healed up. And that's not because it's healed naturally, because it's been helped to heal. So I think we should all do our bit in terms of always have a carp care kit on you. Well, I know Darrell will obviously.
Yeah, I think especially post spawning, it's like there's lots of times when I catch fish when I put literally nothing on them. I've made a little hole in their mouth, I take the hook out, and they just go back.
Yeah.
But they're now post spawning, there's a very high chance you could pull one in with his fins absolutely ragged, all these scales or a couple of scales missing. There's a very good chance you could catch fish in that condition, and there's never a better time to make sure that you've got that skin product on you. You know, there's generally 2, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there are.
Like, I use them, but I don't know what they're called.
You've got Propolis.
Propolis.
Yeah, that's quite a known one. A lot of people use the stuff from the koi industry.
Yeah.
Which, if they're using something.
Yeah, I think they call the stuff the same. You know, I think they're all getting them from the same place.
I think it is called. I think it is Propolis.
Propolis, yeah.
Yeah, Corda do the Propolis.
But yeah, just a little bit of that on the scale. It don't hurt. It ain't, you know, it don't cost a lot of money, and it's if you're gonna spend all that money and time and bait and hooks and rigs and rods and reels, you know, an extra 5, 10, 15 quid, whatever it is, to look after the fish. That's the least you can do.
Cool. Well, thank you, Tom, for joining us.
No, thank you very much for having me down.
What is coming this Friday?
Big Cup story.
Yeah. Where is it?
Where are we
looking
We're
at?
talking about the Fat Lady from St Ives in 2005. Somehow, I managed to ramble on for over an hour about it, even though it was not nearly 20 years ago now. But yeah, I've done my homework, read the book. As regards to the lake, 35 acres, roughly 12 carp, probably the most difficult lake that I've ever fished, probably, as in terms of acreage to stock. And yeah, it's a good story. It's a tale of being super keen, super stubborn, and giving it 100%.
So that'll be live on Friday.
Live on Friday.
Lovely job.
Lovely.
Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Adios.
Over and out.
Cheers.